So the second area that I think is incredibly important is investing in research and development. And here, of course, it is particularly encouraging to have a Nobel Prize winning scientist heading the Department of Energy. You know, we're spending just trivial amounts. Last time I checked, we were spending as much in a year on renewable energy R&D in the U.S. government as we spend in Iraq in a single day. It is just an insignificant amount of money. The electric power industry spends roughly 1% to 2% of its revenues on research and development. I met with a CEO recently of a packaging company, a small packaging company in North Carolina that spends 10% of its revenues on R&D. This is the electric utility industry is one of the least innovative industries in the country and indeed in the world. There are good structural reasons for that. It's a regulated industry. It's big. It's slow. It's relatively lazy, and that's, you know, I think one of the transformations that's being that has occurred as a result of the inflow of venture capital, of entrepreneurialism, of small and medium companies are suddenly getting into this field in recent years. Many of you representing those sectors here in the room today. That is exactly what's needed if we're going to get transformational change. But you got to be doing the basic science and engineering to support that. I mean, these technologies, you know, often are coming out of universities, and we need to step up our investment in science and engineering in this country. You know, China and India are both graduating multiples of the numbers of engineers each year than we are. And we're eventually going to lose a game here if that trend continues. So stepping up that government research and development is essential. We're already now spending more in the private sector in R&D, in energy, which I think is a recent development and is the way it should be. But both of those boats need to rise, and the private sector will have a lot more to work with if we're properly investing in the government research and development. And then finally, and I think critically, we need to change the way the power industry is structured and the way that it is motivated, the way that the incentives exist within that sector. Germany has gone from 4% renewables in its electricity sector 10 years ago to 14% today. From 4% to 14% today. It is on a track to get to, you know, 40, 50% or more. And Germany is doing that with a renewable resource base that is, you know, frankly pathetic compared to what we have in this country. The average solar resource in Germany, which has one of the largest photovoltaic markets in the world today, is equivalent to Anchorage, Alaska. And you know, if you dropped Germany into the Great Plains of the United States in terms of the wind resource, it would literally disappear. I mean, you wouldn't even develop wind resources compared to what we have here in this country. And the Germans have done that via a law that is actually very similar to one that existed in California back in the 1980s, time I was down in Palm Springs, that sets a price and that really opens the market and gets the utilities out of the business of negotiating every contract. You figure out what it is that should be paid for new renewable power, and you have a very simple standard contract that's signed, and you allow large-scale markets with low transaction costs to develop. You know, we've, of course, gone a different way. We've gone in a direction that Peter Darby yesterday described as command and control, that is utilities required through a renewable portfolio standard to buy renewable power. It's the best system we've got. You know, I think we do need to expand it and move to the federal level if we can. But if we were to implement that at the state level, via a system that they have, like they have in Europe, which we call renewable electricity pricing. They call the electricity feed law in Germany. We could have just an enormous flowering. And I do think it's, you know, really important to emphasize here that while we're all, you know, tremendously excited, you know, the country probably put in 7,500 megawatts worth of wind last year. We're the largest biofuel producer in the world. We are doing absolutely nothing compared to what we potentially could do if we really opened up the power markets, if we really allowed competition, and if we got the electric utilities out of the role of being anti-competitive gatekeepers and really let things flow. And I think this is the time, and there's starting to be momentum both in the Congress and in a number of states to really look at how we regulate the power industry so that we can turn it into the kind of competitive engine that has driven information technology and other sectors of our economy. This is going to be an incredibly pivotal year ahead. We have the financial disaster to get through. We've got the question of, can these industries continue their momentum? What will the economic recovery package look like? Will there, in fact, be a cap-and-trade legislation? And then finally, at the end of the year, there's going to be a critical meeting of governments from around the world in Copenhagen to come up with the successor agreement to the Kyoto Protocol. And of course, everybody, and I was at the last negotiating session in Poland last month, everybody is now looking to the U.S. For leadership in getting an agreement, but also looking to the U.S. For a signal to move forward. I sat across the table from high-level Chinese government officials just a couple months ago. At the end of a long, difficult set of discussions over what the Chinese were willing and were not willing to do, they finally said, you know, the one thing that will cause us to do something dramatically different doesn't have anything to do with what your government leaders say, what the rhetorical arguments are, but if the U.S. actually shows that it's shifting its energy economy in a new direction, we will absolutely want to do the same for purely competitive reasons. So it is going to be an exciting year on the international front, as well as on the domestic front. The world is desperately looking to the U.S. For a new kind of leadership, and I'm hopeful. I think we can do it. And let me conclude with a line that Winston Churchill used in the depths of World War II, before the United States came into the war. And Churchill said that you can always count on the United States to do the right thing after it's exhausted all of the alternatives. Thank you very much.